truths. My thanks to Jonathan Ross, Diane Abbott and Fluff Freeman, and to you. You're more than gorgeous for watching. And remember, kids, don't try any of this at home. We're experts. We'll be back next week with more home truths. So enough respect. Good night. Thank you.
It's the absolute latest.
We're doing a new ad. We're up-marketing the image. We're talking Planet Hollywood. Action, lights, camera.
Absolutely all the big names.
Oh, Sandra, hi, it's me, Patsy Stone.
Fabulous publicity.
You'll do a Low magazine, then. Oh, yeah. Yes.
And fabulous locations. A new series of absolutely fabulous Thursday night at 9:30 on BBC1.
There may be teardrops to shed. So while there's moonlight and music and love and romance, let's face the music and dance.
Joint leaders in the European Championships, the free dance will decide it for Torvill and Dean in half an hour on BBC1.
The new Radio Times includes features on forthcoming BBC programmes, together with complete listings for all television and satellite channels. Now, on BBC1, yesterday's methods prove, in one respect at least, to be well suited to tomorrow's world.
Hello, tonight we're asking some of the most pressing questions facing science today, like this.
How do you get 6 kettle drums into a mini metro?
Can the ancient ways of the crofters in the Outer Hebrides teach us all a thing or two about ecology?
And is this an ordinary tram? Of course it isn't. Later, what could make this the transport system of the future?
But first, perhaps the last thing on the planet you'd expect to be able to sell: sewage. We don't like to think about how it ends up as landfill or dumped at sea, but Carmen's been down to Bristol, where they're turning sewage into money.
Six times a week, every week, a tanker used to leave this dock laden with 900 tons of sewage destined for disposal. It sailed out into the Bristol Channel and dumped its cargo. It was perfectly legal. In fact, it still is for a few more years anyway. But EC legislation will ban the practice by 1998. All water companies will have to comply. But here in Bristol, they're ahead of the game. The ship is no longer sailing because they have this. It's a Swiss-designed, custom-built factory for making fertilizer from human waste. It's the first in the UK and the largest in Europe. Before it was built, the works here produced 300,000 tons of sewage sludge a year for disposal. Now, they produce 11,000 tons of granular fertilizer for sale. The process doesn't use raw sewage. That still has to be drawn up into the treatment works where it's filtered and most of the water siphoned off. After 3 weeks of gentle heating in these digesters, the sludge that's left is ready to be pumped into the factory. Here it's filtered again, then it's spun in centrifuges to drive off excess water, and it's then ready for granulation. In this pipe, the sludge is mixed with tiny dry particles, around which it condenses to form granules. The newly formed granules are fed into a spinning drum and heated to 450 degrees Celsius. Essentially, they're sterilized to kill off any bacteria and, of course, any smell. The system is almost a blueprint for the environmentally conscious factory of the 90s. Recycling is the buzzword, and virtually nothing is wasted. Heat and steam from the dryer are recycled to dry new granules and to heat the digesters in the sewage works. Nothing is allowed to escape the factory. Dust is captured and fed back to the mixer. Even nasty smells are burnt off. The factory is fully automated, so despite its size, it can be operated by just one person. And this is the finished product. It's completely dry and it doesn't smell. Believe me, I wouldn't put my nose in there if it did. It contains nitrogen, phosphate, and a bit of potash. And trials show that it releases its nutrients very slowly. It's also a very good soil conditioner. Now they've made it, all they have to do is sell it. Marketing a fertiliser made from sewage may not be the easiest thing in the world, but farmers have been using sewage sludge for years, so they're more than happy with this. After all, it's cheap and easy to spread. Persuading the likes of you and me to stick it on the garden may take a bit longer. But because it behaves like a natural compost, other people are already becoming interested. It's finding new markets in land restoration after mining operations, and on forest hillsides where the soil on steep slopes has been badly eroded. Instead of dumping at sea and creating a potential environmental problem, it may turn out that this process not only solves that, but can make a small contribution to preserving the environment.
Now, here's something that's close to my heart, or my lungs more like. As a regular cyclist, I'm all in favour of anything that can cut down exhaust fumes in towns, like trams, for instance. OK, there's nothing that special about a tram. They've actually been making quite a comeback recently. What's different about this one is how it's powered. No overhead cables, no electrified rail, and you're just going to have to believe me on this one, but there are no batteries. So, where does the power come from? Well, here's a clue. Inside here, there's a flywheel. And once I've set it spinning, its momentum keeps it going, and that's what drives the car. And believe it or not, that's how the tram works. I've got one over here that's been stripped out so you can see better what's going on inside. Well, down there at the bottom, that's the flywheel inside its sealed round casing. It's 1/4 ton of steel, spinning at up to 4,000 revs a minute. And that's linked to a gearing system that's down here under the driver's seat. And if I engage it, it'll drive the wheels at whatever speed I want. It'll go up to 30 miles an hour. It's a really simple mechanical system. As you drive along, the flywheel actually loses energy and goes down. When you're braking, though, the system actually works the other way round. Instead of the flywheel turning the tram wheels turn the flywheel, speeding the flywheel up a bit, just giving it a little boost. Brilliant. It can go a couple of miles before the flywheel runs down. Now, that mightn't sound very far, but the whole point is it doesn't need to do any more than that. It carries passengers, doesn't it? So it keeps stopping at fixed points to let them on and off. And while that's happening, the flywheel is revved back up again. At each stop, there's a short strip of electrified rail connected to a power supply at the platform. It's low voltage, so it's not dangerous. Now, while the tram's parked, it makes contact with that rail, which feeds an electric motor on board the tram that spins the flywheel back up to its top speed. And in less than a minute, it'll be ready for off again. So the only place you need electricity is at the stops. Now, this kind of flywheel technology isn't going to steam you up the M1, but in towns, it's really neat. It's cheap to run and it's cheap to build because you can lay the tracks down straight on the road. Well, I'm not the only one who thinks it's a good idea. A number of places, including Birmingham, Leicester and Teesside, are seriously considering it. So, you might say that it's an idea really gathering momentum.
Is the weather getting you down? Take heart, you're probably better off than the Canadian insurance companies. In just half an hour, one hailstorm caused $400 million worth of damage. And they weren't just your average hailstones.
Out here, they come as big as golf balls.
Quite so. Now the insurance companies have had enough, They're taking to the air in the hope that seeding the clouds with a chemical will make the hailstones smaller. Actually, it's not a new idea. The Russians used to fire the same stuff into storm clouds using anti-aircraft guns.
Ah, turned out nice again.
Ah, yes, but did it? Unfortunately, no one has yet proved cloud seeding makes any difference at all. But if you can't guarantee lifting the clouds, can you lift those winter blues? It's official. Winter weather does bring bad moods, but there's good news on that front.
1,000,000 bright lights raise a smile.
A few less will too. In fact, just half an hour in the morning in front of the light of 100 bulbs has been shown to brighten your outlook, if not the weather, for the whole day.
Many millions of years ago, fish started to crawl out of the primeval swamps. Fins turned into legs and gills into lungs. The first tetrapods or four-legged animals evolved, the forerunners of amphibians, reptiles and mammals, including us. Per Olberg is a fossil hunter and uses the remains of ancient animals to try and piece together when this event happened. Recently, he made a key discovery.
It's one of the big remaining mysteries of evolution. This has been much the most exciting discovery of my career. There's no question that it's required a good deal of luck.
Per had his stroke of luck not out in the field, but at the University of Oxford Museum.
Most people view museums as something you can visit on a rainy day. They see the exhibition halls with the dinosaurs and whatever on display.
I like the ribs, because imagine that size rib compared to our ribs. I like the size of his tail. Whack, whack.
But they don't realise that there's a whole hidden world behind the locked doors of the museum. You've got masses of material, fossils, insects, stuffed animals, which are not put on display, but are used for research. I'm working on the transition between fishes and backboned land animals, or tetrapods. And at this point, where we are derived from the fishes, you have a transition from water to land.
And the next one.
It all started 3 years ago, when Per was rummaging through some drawers, recataloguing an old collection of fish fossils.
So what bit is that?
I came across a piece of bone that was supposed to be a fish jawbone, but in fact didn't look quite right. Well, I looked at this and I put it back in the drawer. Didn't really do anything with it, but over the next few days I couldn't quite get it out of my mind. Even at home I kept thinking about this thing, and eventually I got fed up, came back down to the museum and had another look at it. And it was then that it first struck me that it might be something entirely different. It might not actually be a fish at all.
To discover its true identity, Per needed a closer look at the jawbone. By picking off the surrounding sandstone, he could see that the teeth were too intricate to come from a fish. The fossil had to be something more advanced, a tetrapod.
Once I'd assembled a few more bits and pieces of this animal, it was possible to get some idea of the shape and size of it. Now, you might think that it's a bit rich to infer sort of 4.5 foot of tetrapod from these scrappy remains, but we do know what slightly later related forms looked like, and so it's possible to make educated guesses. Mind you, nobody expected it would actually be this big.
The crucial part of the puzzle that Per needed to prove his case was a piece of leg bone. And that's exactly what turned up in another drawer, again mislabeled as a fish.
What I got here is a shin bone, or tibia, and it's got joint surfaces at the end for ankle bones. Now, if you've got ankle bones, you've got an ankle, you've got a foot, you've got a leg. What we're looking at here is actually the earliest piece of a leg bone ever found. It's pushed back the date of the earliest known tetrapods by about 10 million years. And together with other similar discoveries elsewhere, it's beginning to build up a picture of how the transition from water to land actually happened.
Per is convinced that by taking a fresh look at old fossils, much more can be learnt about the past.
Bin... Dinosaur.
There are bound to be other discoveries, just as important, simply waiting to be made in museum collections up and down the country.
It's not another story about space. Today, it's kettle drums. And that question, how do you get 6 kettle drums into a mini metro? Kettle drums have a built-in problem. Because they're so bulky and have to be kept upright, it takes a lot of space and muscle to lug them around from concert to concert. Have a look at these. There is an obvious bit missing because this kettle drum hasn't got a kettle. After centuries of using traditional drums, it now seems that you don't have to have a kettle. See what it sounds like? Okay, I think. But to check scientifically, you need a computer and standardized bongs. So, the traditional drum, the kettleless drum. They sound pretty similar, but let's see what they look like on the computer. Right, this is the sound from the drum with a kettle, and this is the kettleless drum. These peaks represent the different tones or frequencies which combine together to produce the rich, full sound. Now, no 2 drums are ever identical, but you can see here that the peaks are very similar. But this one does have an extra frequency there, because without the kettle, the drum head is more free to vibrate, and this produces a slightly fuller sound, which some people apparently prefer. But to judge for yourself how they sound in the hands of a top performer, here's Evelyn Glennie. Evelyn, what do you think?
Well, I think they're very interesting. For a multi-setup like this, where I have more than one instrument, they work very well and I can control the resonance well. I think probably for using them in a full symphony orchestra may need some experimenting. I don't know whether the sound would actually be big or full enough or broad enough, but they're very good to transport. You can fit them in your car, and you know, I think a lot of young people, educational people, brass bands who have to continually move the instruments, this may be good.
Very convenient.
Very convenient.
Try them again for us.
Okay.
Years ago, before agro-industry, before combine harvesters, pesticides, herbicides, fertilizers, the British countryside looked very different. And if you want an idea of how it looked, you must come here, to the Outer Hebrides in the far northwest of Scotland. The island of South Uist is the stronghold of crofting, a way of farming which uses techniques hundreds, if not thousands, of years old.
Crofting, you know, is a bit more than crofting is just not agriculture. I mean, it's people's sort of lives and culture and everything are sort of wound up in it. This is sort of ingrained into you, really, you know, from the time you're born.
10 years ago, crofting was seen at best as rather quaint, at worst as inefficient and backward. In the last couple of years, though, attitudes have taken quite a turn. Partly that's due to the revival of the whole Gaelic culture that's happening now, but it's also due to the arrival on South Uist of the conservationists. They've come out in strong support of crofting because they believe it's vital to the existence of a rare habitat that's found on South Uist, the Macha. Macha is a plain, flat as a tabletop, that runs inland from the sand dunes. It's found only in certain parts of Scotland and Ireland, and it's important for migrating seabirds. And in the summer, it becomes an enormous display of wild flowers.
Now, it seems reasonable to think that farming and conservation don't mix. After all, activities like ploughing appear pretty destructive. But with the Macha, that's not the case. In fact, ecologists say that if it wasn't for the crofting, it wouldn't exist at all.
Stuart Angus of Scottish Natural Heritage has demonstrated this with a simple piece of ecological research. Over the past few years, he's been looking at the effect of farming on the Macha. The crofters grow their crops on the Macha in strips on a 3-year rotation. Like the fields of long ago, they're filled with wild flowers. These are corn marigolds. By counting the species of flowers in both farmed and wild areas, Stuart has revealed something surprising. He's found that there are many more types of wild flowers on farmed Macha than the wild areas.
Cultivation, by disturbing the ground, brings the seed to the surface. Then the effect of rotation and the different crops introduces another element of variety in the system, forming a rich variety of habitat within a very small area.
But the story goes further than flowers. Man's influence on the Macha is more profound than that. Underneath the Macha isn't soil, but sand. And being sand, it's not very fertile. So what the crofters do is collect rotting seaweed that's washed up on the beaches during storms and plough it into the fields. The weed contains a sticky compound called sodium alginate. This binds the grains of sand together. Without the seaweed, Stuart Angus believes the Macha would be very different. He's found some accounts written by visitors to the islands, and instead of lush Macha, they describe seeing a sandy desert.
This is one from 1764 by Professor Walker. The west coast of South Uist is a dead plain, in most places about 2 miles broad and of so deep a sand that there are no springs in it. The shore is fenced with vast banks of blowing sand, and no effective means have ever been used to restrain its devastation.
What happened was this. At the time, the seaweed was burned to make industrial products. Local landlords stopped the crofters from putting it on the fields, and so the sand began to erode and blow over the Macha.
So crofting is vital to the preservation of the Macha and the plants and animals associated with agriculture here. What that means is the conservationists are falling over themselves to make sure the crofters keep doing things in the traditional way.
These crofters have been persuaded to cut their hayfields a month late to protect the nests of the corncrake, a bird that was common throughout Britain before the days of combine harvesters and early crops.
They get £50 a hectare for doing that, and there's an extra £10 a hectare for cutting your field in a corncrake friendly pattern, as shown in this leaflet. And then there's another grant of £50 for using traditional techniques such as seaweeding.
We were thought of as just a bunch of silly peasants, you know, sort of pushing a few sheep around and the odd Highland cow. But so it is a bit amusing to think that after all these years, people have suddenly sort of realised, maybe we had it right all the time.
Looked at objectively, what's happening in South Uist is rather odd. Conservationists making strenuous efforts to preserve a landscape that's, ecologically speaking, unnatural.
But here, as with so much of the British countryside, human activity has created a habitat, something unique and complete in itself. And because of that, more and more people feel that, though it might be unnatural, it's worth preserving. So crofting, by not changing at all, has become rather up to date.
It certainly is a beautiful part of the world. Now let's talk money. Speculating is the art of making money by buying and selling money. $1 trillion is gambled on the world's money markets, not in a year, but every single day. The prices of currencies change constantly, and the idea is to make a fortune by buying a particular currency, say Japanese yen, just before the yen rises in value, and then selling them just before they collapse. But it's a risky business because the markets are so unpredictable. There are no obvious patterns. So speculators rely on a mixture of intuition, experience, and sheer guesswork. But some scientists say that there are patterns in the money markets, it's just that they're very subtle. They say that if computers could be taught to recognise those patterns, they could then predict the market's behaviour and make even more money for their owners. It's now widely known that some financiers are experimenting with computers as speculators, but none of the big banks are prepared to talk about it. Henry Green isn't quite so shy. Henry used to be a NASA rocket scientist using computers to predict turbulence in rocket engines. Now he believes he can use similar ideas to predict turbulence in the money markets.
Some people say you can't predict the financial markets. That's a matter of opinion. I believe the money markets do have patterns. These are very difficult patterns for humans to recognize because there's so much information involved.
And that's where the computer comes in.
If we take a computer and train it with some form of artificial intelligence, and then take the example of feeding it 3 years of trading data, we can then find patterns to do with the rising of the dollar and the falling of the dollar. I don't really care what the patterns look like. That's not important. What's important is that the patterns work. As long as the patterns work, we continue to make money. If my clients make money, I make money.
So that's the gospel according to Henry, and that's what his clients believe. But how about testing Henry's predictions?
And I'd like to make a proposition, which is to give you an imaginary $1 million. And what we'll do is we'll trade that in the Japanese yen, the German Deutschmark, the British pound, and the US dollar.
So the idea is the computer, on my behalf, will buy and sell in these currencies?
Yes, we'll create a forecast on a daily basis and see what happens.
And I can go out and pick my own Caribbean island now, can I?
Sure.
As long as it's an imaginary one. Well, that was a month ago, Henry. What's happened to my virtually real $1 million in that time?
Well, if you remember, Howard, we had 4 currencies to trade, but we've decided to show only the results with one, the Japanese yen. And in this picture, we're showing in the red line the yen over a period of about 30 days, where you can see most of the time was going down in value, and then beginning of this year began to go up. We have 2 other lines. One is a black one in the middle, and then a blue one. When the blue line is below the black line, the computer is telling us to sell the yen. When it's at the same level as the black line, it's telling us to do nothing. And up here, when we go above the black line, the computer is saying to buy the yen. If we look at this, having started on December the 13th, the forecast made by the computer was to sell yen. And the next day, the market started to go down. The next day, again, the computer said sell yen again. And we continue following what the computer said every day until the beginning of Christmas holidays. During Christmas, there's very little activity in the markets, so we stay neutral and come back at the beginning of the year with the computer having said to sell again. But there was a bleep, and as we got closer, we realized we needed to go and buy yen, so the lines now come back up above.
The computer told you to buy there. Made a bit of a mistake, but then the rise of the yen was quite sharp.
That's right.
The big question is, did the computer make me money or lose me money?
Well, Howard, the computer made you money.
Good.
Made you about $19,700.
That's amazing.
Which translates roughly to about 27% per year return.
Now, how does that compare with a human speculator?
Well, a good trader in the money markets who's got a lot of experience and is professional at this would make at most about 15%, and that's very hard work. So by comparison to 27%, you can see the major differences and advantages that could be gained by using a computer.
It's impressive, but if everybody starts using a system like this because it does work, say, you're going to lose your advantage, aren't you?
Well, we think we have a very good system, and we'll keep it on the edge, so we won't be losing the advantage. So when you do have your first real million, Howard, please come and see us.
All right, Henry, but don't hold your breath. Well, that's all for tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll be back at the same time next week. Good night. 19,000.
The subject of obsession will be in the public eye on BBC2 shortly, asking whether anti-stalking laws should be introduced in Britain.
Saturday evening takes off with Superman at 5:30.
I don't want to study him. I want to kill him.
Noel's in trouble at 6:15.
I suppose there'll be one of your infernal racket-making house parties this week.
Oh, yes.
Can I come too?
An invitation to Big Break at 7:15.
You see that, Fred? These mouth paper are loving.
Meet Dorian's favourite in Birds of a Feather at 7:45.
Dorian, this is Wayne. Wayne, it's your birthday.
There's little to celebrate in Casualty at 8:15.
The chance of an operation having any beneficial effect on him is negligible, unless he stops smoking.
This hound's habit is Matt's. That's live at 9:05. And with highlights of all the day's play in Match of the Day at 10:05, these are the highlights for Saturday evening on BBC1.
The Ice Dance Championship is excitingly poised as BBC1 now provides live coverage from Copenhagen. Introduced by Sue Barker.
Time, the crime drama continues in the comparatively rarefied atmosphere of The Chief. This Sunday on the Central Match Live, get ready for the clash of the season. It's a Nottingham City